Well, the Gators just kicked the absolute crap out of the Vanderbilt Commodores, and I enjoyed every single second of it. We're going to talk about it here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Saturday. Happy Victory Saturday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country, NFL 33. What's up, Billy Billionaire and Harrison Sanchez? I got to say, Harrison, I don't think I've ever seen you anywhere but a live stream. And it's kind of great. I do love making the presence felt there. But the Florida Gators just, dominated, kicked the crap out of, mollywopped the Vanderbilt Commodores in every sense of the word. It was fun to watch. I think the first half, the second half, yes, Vanderbilt outscored you by 2. But it was clear that Vanderbilt had their foot on the gas all the way through. And then, and then the first half, Florida just kicked the crap out of them. Tyrese Samuel, pretty damn good game for him, at least scoring wise. It was, I want to say this game was comforting, I guess, that Zion Pullen played, had his worst shooting performance, one of his worst shooting performances of the season. Micah Hanlogton was relatively non-existent. He fouled out. And you still won by a lot. And this is one of those games where you should win by a lot. And so I'm happy to see Florida actually do that, because when you have this stretch of games that Florida has with the 2 Bama games and just a relatively tough schedule to finish the year in general, you can overlook a game like Vanderbilt, and Florida didn't do that. And so I loved it. I did love that there was one point in the first half where I think it was Walter Clayton Jr. was being the ball handler. Might have been Zion Pullen. But they go and Tyrese Samuel cuts to the basket. They throw the oop. And like the next possession, Florida did the same thing, except it was a bounce pass this time. And it's just one of those things where I enjoy noticing that, well, you just threw an oop. Might be looking for that again. So they go with the bounce pass. They go high, then go low. Watching Florida, this is one of those games where they didn't shoot particularly well from 3. You had Will Richard shot 5 for 9, and that was great. Walter Clayton shot 3 for 7, which is pretty good. And then you had Thomas Huck shot 1 for 3 or 1 for 4. Micah Hanlogton had a miss. And again, he didn't score today, if I'm not mistaken. Micah Hanlogton did not score today. Alex Condon, Denzel Aberdeen. Denzel Aberdeen had a sequence that I think took a few years off my life, where it was in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. He got into the paint. He pulled a me in 2K. So he got under the basket with a guard, surrounded by people significantly bigger than him. And he just put the shot up anyway. And then when it inevitably missed, he got the board, and then he kicked it out, and it worked out. But he had a couple of sequences where I was kind of just very confused with what he was doing. I don't know. It felt kind of like he was just like, oh, it's Vanderbilt. I'm going to press against them, and I'm just going to go hard. And it didn't really work. Riley Poole had a great backdoor cut that he had that little reverse layup in. That's pretty sweet. It was a game where you saw a lot of things that you should see from a pretty good team, and then you saw some things that you're not super thrilled about. Like Florida really struggled when Vanderbilt went for that full court press. And it's one of those things where a lot of college teams struggle when they go up against that full court press. because they're so young, they're inexperienced, they're college kids. And they go up against that full court press and they struggle. And Florida had it happen quite a bit. Vanderbilt had more steals than Florida did this game. And a lot of it was derived from that full court press where Florida kept making some mistakes on it, which does worry me a little bit, because if you go against a good team that does that, you're probably going to have, or that's going to do that consistently, you're going to have some issues there. Antonio Watkins, it's Vandy. Shrug, it is Vandy. But again, this is one of those games where you should have kicked the crap out of them, and you did. And Vanderbilt, like, they closed the gap late in the game to make it look like a closer game than it really was. But you should have kicked the crap out of them, and you did. There were some points where I was like, oh, Florida might blow this, but they were up like 13 at the time that I was thinking that. And so it never really got close to them blowing it, which, again, we've seen them do quite frequently. That's one of their favorite things to do. And so it was I think a pretty good game. It was the Florida Gators winning a game that they should have won. And again, I get it, Antonio. It's Vandy. We'll shrug the shoulders, sure. But this is Florida's one of 5 teams that hasn't lost a quad 2, 3, or 4 game this season. I'm going to be happy about it. Like, this is a team that has 8 losses and they're all quad 1. And so I think Florida just showing up and doing that again. If you see that full court press, you're probably going to struggle a bit, which is very worrisome. Like, because Vanderbilt, the way that they operate, I don't think is a way that you can operate at Vanderbilt. Like, the way that Jerry Stackhouse runs the team is not an effective way to run a team at Vanderbilt. You're like, oh, we want to slow the clock down. We want to get our shots, whatever it may be. But, like, if you're going with that full court press, for example, like, that's tiring to do as a defender. So if you're going to that, you're going to have to be able to rotate more. And, well, Vanderbilt doesn't really have the team built to do that. Like, their team's not built to go deep into the rotation. They try to, but they're not good at it because they don't have a team like that. Vanderbilt tries to kind of kill the clock and just go, all right, as long as we get a good shot, we're going to do that. But then multiple times during this game, they didn't get good shots because they weren't really doing much. So it was a pretty easy game for the Florida Gators to win. But again, it's one of those games where we're going to look at it and we're going to, or not, I think that we're just going to look past it, but it's one of those games where they could have looked past it before it happened and it could have snuck up on you. So it's just good to see a team go out there and kick the crap out of a team that they're supposed to kick the crap out of. Tyrese Samuel's free throws struggles coming back, really just going to be the death of me. I know. I just know that during the tournament, we're going to be at a point where Tyrese Samuel needs to shoot free throws. And if he misses them, this hair, this freshly washed hair, I'm going to rip it out of my skull. Like that's what we're going to do if Tyrese Samuel goes 1 for 5 from the free throw line today. Okay. Yeah. It's going to drive me crazy. If you have any questions or any comments and you want to get to the chat, I see there's a bunch of messages in the chat. I will get to them in the second half of this. But first, we're going to get a quick word from a couple sponsors. This bonus episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And I need you guys to know that I've been working on builders on FanDuel, which is like you take a bunch of things that should probably definitely happen, and then you bet on them. And it's just like a bankroll builder. And I do bankroll builders basically now and just like lottos. And I want you to know I had a bet that was bet $25, win 675. I needed 15 Brandon Miller points, and I needed 3 Russell Westbrook rebounds. Russell Westbrook got 2 rebounds. And there were a bunch of things. Those were the 2 legs that missed, were 3 Russell Westbrook rebounds. And Brandon Miller did a really fun thing last night where he shot a grand total. He scored 11 points, but he shot 4 for 14 from the field, 2 for 7 from 3. Broke my heart. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So don't bet on Brandon Miller. But I'm just saying, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. Remember that FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This bonus episode of Locked On Gators is also brought to you by Nissan, and our partners over at Nissan have worked with us to create a new segment, which we brought in the fall, bringing it back here across the Locked On College Network, titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play from the Florida Gators. I mean, now basketball, we'll do baseball sometime. This is a basketball stream, so we're going to talk about basketball. And I got to say, for me, I think it was that sequence I talked about earlier in the game. Like, there were obviously quite a few good moments for the Florida Gators, but that sequence earlier where thrilling is what we'll call it, where they threw the oop and then they had the bounce pass, and it was just the same thing, but they got to it in different ways. And that's just, it felt like just watching good basketball, beautiful basketball there. And I loved it, and I will continue to love it. I know I'm not a basketball expert, but I know good basketball when I see it. And that was good basketball. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. Hey, thank you for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, your first live watch of the day. If you're watching also, that is a I will, that's a good reminder for me that Monday's show, if you listen to it on audio, will not be available until Monday afternoon. YouTube still coming out at 8 a.m. Eastern time, but Monday audio going to come out Monday afternoon, just something that we're doing on the back end, Locked On. And so just know, if you typically listen to shows, you're not going to hear it until Monday afternoon. But going back to this Florida Gators game, we're going to get into the chat here. Billy, yeah, I know who you are. I get you. I know who you are. We literally DM'd like today. Come on. Tony, what's up? How you doing? We got Alabama going to get beat too. We didn't forget. Yeah. I will say that just we'll revisit the Alabama game because I was not available to go live after it, but it was tremendous game there. But, and I actually, before we talk about that game, so during the Florida game today, the commentators were talking about all of the great games in the SEC this year. They named 4 or 5 games, and all of them were Florida games. Just want to point that one out. All of the games they mentioned were Florida games. They're like, oh yeah, there's some great games in the SEC. Florida versus Alabama the other day. Florida versus Georgia that went to overtime. Florida versus Kentucky. Like they just named a bunch of Florida games. Whether they won or lost, they just named a bunch of Florida games. And I thought that was just funny, that it was just like, why are you like you're just saying, oh yeah, great games in the SEC, and then just name all Florida. It's just a funny thing. I just thought it was, entertaining there. Antonio Watkins said free throws in practice for the next 2 weeks. Yeah, please. Pretty please, Todd. Just saying. Like, free throws is one of those things where it drives me crazy if you're not good at them, which makes watching college basketball just atrocious a lot. Just because it's one of those things, you can practice them on your own, and I get it, in game is different, but like, you can practice those as much as you want when you're by yourself. That's why I'm like, all right, like as far as shot creation, like, you could work on your handle, you could work on your shot, but then you're working on just being open shots, working off the catch. Like, you can't do that by yourself. Again, shot creation, you can work there, but that's not really dealing with how a defender's actually going to defend you. Free throws is exactly how it is in game, aside from like the noise and then the pressure that you feel there. But that's one of those things where Peyton Manning has a quote, pressure is what you feel when you don't know what the hell you're doing. If your free throw is pretty damn automatic, or at least pretty damn good, not going to feel as much pressure. But go back to the Bama game. You lost by 5 in overtime at Alabama. In a game where there were, I'm not going to blame the call against Florida. That was the elbow. I'm not going to blame the refs for anything, really. But it was a game that, for Florida, like, you played pretty damn well. You would have liked to shoot a little bit better from 3, but like, you held Alabama to 25% from 3. It was probably game of the year for me so far. Just watching it was incredible to watch. It was one of the, I think they said 3 SEC games where Florida got out rebounded, just in general, and they lost 2 of those 3. So yeah, I think for Florida, like, you got to just, have to crash more, I guess. But again, I mean, Walter Clayton shooting 4 for 16 from three. Three itself is not great. Zion pulling 17 points is great, but 17 points on 16 shots isn't. Tyrese Samuel, 14 points on 16 shots. Like, that stuff isn't really winning there. Especially when you consider, like, you held Alabama to some similar standards. Pringle, 13 shots, 13 points. Sears, 15 shots, 17 points. Griffin, 11 shots, 10 points. Like, you heard that. Antonio, was Kugel hurt? I'm assuming you're talking about the Alabama game because he played 3 minutes. I think it was just one of those times where, he wasn't. I want to say this without coming off as a jerk or all, because Kugel played 6 minutes today too. First off, starters played more than I thought they would, considering how the game is trending today. As far as Wednesday, I feel like Riley Kugel is just a player where Todd Golden, as good as Kugel is, he's a microwave. Like, he's wildly inconsistent. And so I think Todd Golden's just trying to rein him in a little bit. Like, you get the shot selection down, because he can completely take over a game or he can completely destroy a game at certain points. So I think it's about managing him and managing those expectations and maximizing the benefit you get while minimizing the negatives that he brings to the table. Anyone else have a few minutes in every second half where they feel like Doc Rivers took over? Yeah, every single game, Scott. Every single game. Without fail. Florida could be up 40 at the half, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be really fun to watch how they screw this. And we've talked about this before, where we go, Florida wins a lot of close games. They win a lot of close games because they blow a lot of big leads, and they end up getting forced into close games. And it drives me crazy that, congratulations, you're winning close games, but you're also blowing big leads to get into those close games that you then have to win, which are tough wins. And yeah, it drives me absolutely berserk. Just wanted to throw that one out there. But thank you all so much for tuning in, talking basketball for a bit. We're going to try to cover more basketball on the actual show, especially as we get closer to the tournament, which is going to be just electric. Working from home has made March Madness so much more fun. I just want to throw that one out there. But thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free breakfast in the podcast. We'll be back Monday to talk more Florida Gators football. Don't forget, YouTube is still coming out at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. Audio platforms afternoon on Monday Eastern time. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33. And as always, I will see you all next time.